The Power Moms Network, empowering moms to lift the world.
Welcome. I'm Riley Karsh.
I'm Tova Kopan.
We are thrilled to bring you the We Go Boldly podcast.
Let's talk big burning questions, life changes, and maybe a bit of personal business.
Let's be bold and brave together. Are you ready?
I am. Here comes the show.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to We Go Boldly, the podcast where we are thrilled to be a part of the Power Moms Network. At Power Moms Network, we are empowering moms and creating a community of mothers, mentoring other moms to greatness. There's a lot of moms in that sentence. So sorry, everyone. I trip over it sometimes, but I really believe in it. And I think it is one of the best decisions we've made as a podcast so far. So we are thrilled to be part of the Power Moms Network. You can check them out online at powermoms.com. So it's a new season. It's a mini season. Meaning it's not 25 episodes. But, if you've been following along with us through the summer, we've been doing a summer of celebration. And it's important to us. We realized, I think we always knew this, but we realized at some point during May, December, and the February from the great beyond, that we needed to have more fun in our lives. We needed to celebrate more and enjoy things more. And not in that, like, you ought to be doing kind of way, in that, like, we really believe that an essential component of living the limitless life that we talk about all the time and that we try to educate people towards and all those things is to have joy in your life. And so this whole season, this whole mini season, 6 episodes, we're going to talk about specific words and like what they mean for us and how they relate to us finding joy. And it's going to be a little lighter, maybe, possibly. I doubt it. Who am I kidding? And but we're going to have fun with it. And so we hope you enjoy it and let us know what you think. You can always find us online at goboldlyinitiative.com or on social media at Go Boldly Together. We would love to hear from you. So all of that I've said, let me say hello to Tova and get her talking to you guys as well. So how are you today, Tova? What's doing with you? What's going on?
Yeah, no, I am good.
Is that a question?
It's always a question. No, I'm good. I'm excited. It's funny because I think I've been thinking about this a lot recently, and maybe it's because, like, we just rewatched Inside Out the other day, and there's a lot of times, like, politically, where it's like, oh, they're saying the quiet things out loud. Like, I was gonna say, like, the bad side, but I guess it depends on what side you're on. But I think sometimes it's really important to say the quiet things out loud. And I've realized this a lot with parenting.
Yeah.
And I think it's not so much a failure of our parents individually, like, hi mom, hi Riley's mom, who both listen.
Yeah.
But I think that there were a lot of things that were just, like, assumed that kids would know. Just because, like, it was just assumed that, like, kids would know. Like, because adults knew it,
Right.
or because it should be obvious. And I've really realized that I make it a point, because I didn't know a lot of those things. Like, I did not know them. And I watch Inside Out and I'm like, oh, like, I'm not the only one who didn't know those things, because I'm watching the inside of this person's brain and she doesn't know those things. And so I really make it a point with my kids to, like, say the quiet thing out loud as much as possible. Like, if my son has been struggling this baseball season, making kind of difficult choices and saying, like, hey, the reason that this is really hard is because you're making a tough choice between 2 bad options. As opposed to, like, listen, you just got to make a choice, man. You just got to choose between these two things. Like, but by actually saying, like, hey, these are two bad choices that you have. And that's why this is hard. And it's not really fair that you were put in this position. And it's not necessarily the adult's fault, at least your immediate, like, coach level fault that you were put in this position. Like, this is just a weird situation.
Right.
And I think and I'm saying all of that to say that one of the reasons I think that we have really made this effort of the summer of celebration, and the reason that we wanted to have these conversations about words, is because it's important to talk about what a word means to you, and whether it's for you individually, so or so that the people in your lives know what that word means to you. And I remember we had a woman in one of our women's circle, and she was talking about spending a delightful weekend with like by herself, like going to bookstores, like getting books.
Right.
And her kids were like, Mom, you are not fun. You don't do anything fun. And she was like, that was fun. Like,
Right.
and so I think it really is important. And I know we're not going to pick the word content. We don't want to talk about that word.
No,
We don't
no,
like
thank
that
you.
word. But I think it's important to, like, know what words mean to you and take the time to figure them out. And also make sure that the important people around you, know what they mean to you. I forget if it was a TV show or trying to think if it was a TV show or a movie or a podcast. I don't remember any of these things. But someone was talking about how, like, they had, I'm rewatching This Is Us. That's what it is. And one of the people was like, well, I had this plan that we were going to move to South Carolina. Like, we were going to retire and we were going to move to South Carolina. And the wife was like, oh, that was one of your secret plans that you just didn't tell me. Because
Right.
I think so often we, like, keep these things and we don't define them or we don't talk about them.
Yeah, it's so I think particularly in instances like that where we don't share the stuff that's going on inside, right? It's fear-based, right? You're afraid. And sometimes you're afraid it'll be rejected. Sometimes you're afraid other people won't be as excited as you are, and somehow that'll diminish the value of whatever it is you're thinking and feeling.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes you're just afraid to say it because maybe it won't happen. And if you say it out loud and it doesn't happen, it'll somehow be more disappointing, right?
Yeah.
But today we're going to talk about adventure. And this is a word, both Tova and I like this word, but it is core to my being. And interestingly, and unsurprisingly, I think, when I did our mission statement course, when I, like, went through it, because, we beta test all our courses ourselves and have other people do it, whatever. But, when I did it, that was the first thing that came up for me, is that adventure is like a core value for me. And you might be listening to me like, value? Adventure is not a value, but it is for me. It might not be for you, and that's cool. But it has been since since I have memories, right? Like my entire life, not just when we're like, oh, my whole life, but it was actually in my 20s sometimes. Like, literally, I remember as the youngest memories I have, I was interested in being out on adventures and doing things and seeing the world and, like, experiencing life and being crazy and doing whatever crazy things I thought of to do. And so I'm very attached to this word. And this word of adventure really, for me, relates to my feelings of joy. And when I feel like I don't have adventure in my life, I notice it. Like, I feel sad and sometimes depressed and sometimes like, oh my God, what am I going to do? I'm stuck and I'm claustrophobic and I'm going to die like this, right? Like, I go into this weird spiral about, like, what's happening because I don't have any adventurous plans coming up. And so, I did an outline for us, but it's kind of like just my own thoughts this time. Sorry, everybody. This isn't going to be a super sciencey experience for any of us. But I do have a like Merriam-Webster definition for us just to, like, baseline it, right? So Merriam-Webster says adventure is an undertaking usually involving danger and unknown risks, the encountering of risks, an exciting or remarkable experience, and for whatever reason, and this I found weird, an enterprise involving financial risk. I don't know why that's included in the definition of adventure, but it is. Maybe because like ventures are adventurous. I don't know. That was my only like thought process on that. So that's how, adventure is like universally defined. But for me, it has changed over my whole lifetime, right? When I was little, it was like going and exploring the woods and like learning about new flowers and birds and trees and taking my little nerdy Audubon book out and doing my animal identification and whatever other weird stuff I used to love to do. It's not weird if you do it now, by the way. I loved it. I did it all the time. And then, later in my 20s, it was way more risky stuff like, going traveling alone or going to places where people are like, well, maybe you shouldn't go there alone as a woman, a young woman, and doing it anyway. Thank God I survived that phase of my life, but I did. And it was still like, it is some of my most valued and treasured memories and something I will never regret doing, right? Like these are parts of who I am and I love that and I can look back on those things and be joyful about them. So that's what adventure is for me. Well, I should say now adventure is a little different because I have kids and a husband and I can't just roam around the world by myself most of the time. And so now adventure is like getting my kids to try things and do different like crazy things that they're like scared of or not sure about, or traveling with them and prioritizing that. So that's kind of what adventure is for me. Tova, do you want to talk a little bit about what it is for you?
Yeah, it's interesting because I have a weird relationship with the word adventure. It's a less I was gonna say a less clean. I don't think that's the word I'm looking for. A less simple or like direct. I don't know. I'm missing the word. I'll just use a bunch of words that mean something that's almost what I mean, but not quite what I mean.
Awesome.
Yeah, we'll just work around it.
Yeah, that's fine.
Because when I first think of the word adventure, I think like, oh, well, I was never very adventurous. But then when then you list the things of like traveling alone and going and doing things and like going places, I'm like, well, yeah, no, I mean, I did those things. Yeah, like I've traveled alone and I've gone to places and like, but I mean, like, but I was never really adventurous. And so I don't know what weird rules I have placed on that word and what like society's definitions of myself I have placed on me that have somehow determined that I am not adventurous. And it's interesting because back in college, I was at a board meeting for my sorority and we had to put we played some ice breaking game and we had to put something in like, I don't know if it was two truths and a lie or some sort of game and someone had to guess who it was. And my thing that I wanted to do was I want to hike the Appalachian Trail. And so clearly that is a pretty adventurous pursuit.
Yeah.
And like everyone assumed it was me. So like I was putting off adventurous vibes. Like
I would never in my life would I, first of all, I'm not friends with people who aren't adventurous, and you're like one of my best friends, so clearly you're adventurous. But also, I would never talk to you and think you're not adventurous. You're constantly trying new things. You're constantly going like putting yourself out there.
I mean, I was just
getting
talking to someone the other I was just talking to somebody the other day about like how I went paddleboarding. I mean, I was a whitewater kayaker for many years. Like I broke my nose on a class 4 river.
Yeah. So I want to unpack this, Tova. Yeah. I feel like this might help people. Like when you picture adventurous as like a description of somebody, What are you seeing?
Like risks that I wasn't willing to take.
But what
Like
kind
risk,
of,
like so I don't think I was ever willing to participate in what I would consider to be like unknown or risky behavior.
I
Like
mean, whitewater rafting is risky behavior.
I know. But like I was not like so we had someone on the podcast quite a long time ago, Christine Robinson, and she talked about how she does these like not risky things, but she's willing to like take leaps in her career, but they're all very like like so like I mean okay, I never did any drugs that are now legal. Let's put it that way.
Yeah.
So anything that's now legal, you know, we don't count those,
Yeah.
but like anything that's still illegal, I never did. Like, and I never wanted to. Like, I was never, you know, I had an opportunity, for example, to work at a, you know, beach, like kind of in a beach summer when you'd have to like stay in lodging with a bunch of people.
Yeah.
And I just knew it was a lot of like partying. I think I must associate adventures with partying.
Clearly. I
I
think
think that's what
you're
I do.
I think that's
I-
without
because
going too much further into it, it
yeah,
seems very clear to me that you're associating adventurous with promiscuous and
yes.
doing, you know, basically dazed and confused, right? Like
Yeah. And then like
that's
and
what you
that's
think is
cool. Like I've
adventurous.
stayed in hostels with promiscuous, adventurous people and been like, cool, yeah, no, I'm just gonna get up my bus early in the morning and like go to northern part of Scotland to like you stay here and have fun.
So I want to like undo that, and maybe that'll
Yeah.
be part of our next our next
Yeah.
season, because
And
that's not necessarily, I mean, that is adventurous, right? Like, and there's nothing wrong with it. Like I am
no,
not here to shame anyone's yum.
and I'm not, I don't like go for it.
Yeah.
Like
And I
I
wouldn't
think
think you would be. I just think
no.
that somehow something like got twisted for you.
Right.
And you like, maybe you saw the movie Dazed and Confused and you were like, that's adventurous. Like that's really adventurous. And then somehow like the 8 bajillion other things you do got discounted. But let's talk
Well,
about that
and
more, because I think
I
that's really important for other people to like recognize what are you doing in your life that gives you that feeling of adventure.
well,
Because
so I do.
I just wait 1 second,
Okay.
because I think doing drugs or being promiscuous would not have given you a feeling of adventure. It would have given you a feeling of terror, and those are not the same things, right? Like
That's
those are not equivalent in any
and shame
way,
and guilt and all sorts of
right?
bad
Like you
things.
would have had, I mean, and we can unpack that another episode, but like I
Not
think
anymore.
that's the feeling you would have had, right? Whatever. You hit 40, man, and it's changed. Everything changes. Um, but I just think, you know, that talking about it is important because it allows other people to see, first of all, like if that's your jam, like
Yeah.
cool. If that's what gives you that sense of adventure, that's awesome. If it's not, then that's not adventure for you.
Well, and I think that I think something's interesting. I was talking to someone about this the other day, in, you know, a lot of my conversations have to do with 12-year-old boys playing baseball.
Yeah.
Um, and about 12-year-old boys playing baseball. But I was talking about, I remember one year, you know, my oldest was working really hard and got better. And he did something. And I was like, it is just amazing to watch you field now. And he was like, Mom, that was a routine play. And I was like, full stop. Last year, you could not have done that.
Right.
Like, yes, it was a routine play today. It wasn't a routine play last year.
Right.
And so, you know, when I was just newly 18, I moved to New York City and lived with three strangers and like went to NYU and lived in Union Square and just like bebopped around town, like by myself.
Mm-hmm.
And there were no cell phones. Like there were no, like, it wasn't like you were like, oh, I'll just call my parent, like call anyone or text somebody. Like you were just on your own.
Yeah.
And, you know, I was just talking to someone the other day about how I like to travel by myself. And I know I like to travel by myself because I've traveled by myself.
Right.
And now I have picked up dear friends. Like I have great friends around the world because I've become friends with people that I met while traveling by myself. But if someone was like, hey, you know, and I'm one of the people, as we've talked about, who like random people are like, hey, haven't talked to you and seen you in 5 years. We have a ticket to a soccer game this weekend. Do you want to come?
Like, come
and
on.
I'm like, yeah, cool. I'm in.
Right.
But I think because it's one of those things, like once you do something, then it takes a little of the, like, you're like, well, now that's something I can do. And it's like it's like with my son, he's like, well, it's a routine play. It's like, yeah, but it's,
Interesting.
do you know what I mean? Like,
yeah, I
and
was waiting for that to come full circle. I was like, where are we going?
yeah, we're
with
back
this?
to the routine play.
I get it now.
You know, and you're like, oh, but it's still an adventure, or it's still like an adventure also doesn't have to be always edgy, like, which I don't know why I have, like, well, I guess because of my weird definition of promiscuity and toxicity of some kind. But also just to talk about how I have defined it with kids, when, especially when my kids were little, like every Saturday morning we'd be going on an adventure, and our adventure was to Costco and Trader Joe's,
right?
And we would, and to Target, like if it was a big day, and but I think, you know, as my kids got older and I learned that they were neurodivergent or variety pack, and I would talk to somebody and they're like, wait a minute, so your kids are great with road trips? I'm like, my kids are awesome with road trips. I'm like, but we have like a road trip playlist, and I've been taking them on adventures since they were born. Yeah. Because every Saturday we would take an adventure to Costco, because I called it an, now sometimes the adventure now is to Western North Carolina for a week, but like, it's still just an adventure where you get in the car. Like, it's just an adventure. Like,
yeah, so we need to take the word just out of that, right? Like, it's an adventure. Life is an adventure. Like, if you are and this is how it ties in for me anyway, to joy and fun and all of those like happy feelings. If you are willing to allow life to be an adventure, meaning like stepping out of your comfort zone, trying new things, reading new books, meeting new people, like trying new foods, all of these sort of seemingly routine, like you were just saying, type things.
Yeah.
If you put them all together, then it becomes adventurous. Now, for me, it becomes it's hard to hold on to that, because I like also, it's possible I'm an adrenaline junkie. I'm not sure. I need to like physically do something new and like go to a new place, or like try a crazy food or something. Like, I shouldn't say that. That's so judgmental. Try a food that I have never seen in my lifetime and think is like wild and outside the scope of normal for me. And I think part of that, for me, it started as escapism, right? Like we talked about this last season and talking about distractions and how do we escape from, you know, the things that are in our lives that maybe we need to deal with. That's how adventure started for me. And it blossomed into something totally different now. And it's after lots of therapy, as discussed. But you know, adventure is one of those things that can take you outside of the normal existence you're living. And that's like fantastic, because then either you're like, this is great and I love it and I want to keep doing it, or you're like, no, not for me, or somewhere in between, and you can hold on to those memories. Like when I think back to some of the places I went and things I did in my 20s, like I don't need to do that today. Like, I don't, no, thank you. That was bananas. But at the time I had a great time, and I can look back on it and be like, wow, that was really fun. I'm so glad I tried that. I don't want to do it today, but man, it's a great memory and it was a great bonding experience and whatever, right? Like there are a million different ways we can look at our adventures in life and use them going forward. We do need to take a quick break. So why don't we do that? And when we come back, we can talk a little bit more about the benefits of embracing adventure and like why you should do it. So we will be right back, everyone. Well, hey there, dream chaser. Are you ready to make the next 12 months of your life unforgettable? Introducing the Year of You, a groundbreaking new goal system group that's about to redefine the way we approach personal growth. Join us with a community of like-minded individuals committed to unlocking their full potential. With expert guidance, personalized strategies, kind-hearted accountability, and a supportive network, the Year of You is more than just a goal-setting group. It's a whole movement. Don't just dream about it, achieve it. Click in the link in our show notes or go ahead and visit us at goboldlyinitiative.com/year of you to learn more today. Let's embark on a transformative journey together towards becoming the best versions we can be. The year of you, where your goals become reality. Okay, welcome back to the show. So, as you all know, we are talking about adventure today and what it means to us. So, for me, as you've heard sort of on repeat through this episode, it's a core value in my life. And what I discovered, I don't know, maybe over the last 10 years, certainly not when I was in my 20s. What I discovered about being adventurous is that it helps you be more confident. It helps you build your resilience and you learn things, right? Like you grow through adventure. And maybe you learn what not to do, right? Which is fine. Or like how not to be or how not to like interact with certain people or whatever. And maybe you learn a new skill, or maybe you learn about a new culture, or you learn that you can jump out of a plane and survive. I don't know.
Have you
So
jumped out of a plane?
no, not yet. It's on the list. Sean, my husband is really, really wants to do it. So we will eventually. It's never been on my list for whatever reason. I'm not opposed to it, but I've also never been like, yay. He made me go in a what is it called? A shark cage. And that was also not on my list. And I learned I don't like going in a cage and being attacked by great white sharks. So, right, like those are adventures
That
you can
has been
have.
on my list. That's always been on my list.
So yeah, we were in South Africa, and so we went and did it, and it was super cold and smelly because they like chum the water,
Chum the water,
obviously.
yeah.
And it was terrifying, like, and not in the fun way of terrifying. It was just like, I'm gonna
going to die.
There are so many sharks. They are headbutting this cage. I'm not gonna survive this. And yeah, so I don't need to do that again. But I also don't regret it, right? Like I'm so glad I did it. Now I know, and I can be like, wow, I don't need to hang out with sharks all the time. So anyway, I think what did that do for me? I grew in confidence, right? For trying something that really did scare me. Like I was very afraid. And also I was uncomfortable because I was with a bunch of strangers. And as you've probably heard over all the seasons of this show, like I'm not great with strangers. Um, it's not my power, my superpower. I'm awkward and that's cool. Although I will say standing in a tank with strangers while being attacked by sharks does bond you. So like you don't have to have the small
Strangers
talk,
no more.
right? Like you don't have to be like, so the weather, it's really cold out. You can be like, oh God, we're gonna die, we're gonna die together. So anyway, it's you overcome your fears. It's good for your mental capacity too, right? Like you expand your emotional range. I feel like when you try new things, and that's never a bad thing, right? To have a bigger emotional vocabulary and capacity and experience, I think is great for finding joy in life.
Well, yeah. I was just gonna say, I think it helps you set your boundaries. Like it like it just helps you learn like what, I don't know, what maybe is important to you, what's not important to you.
Right.
Like what I've learned about from whitewater rafting or whitewater kayaking rather, is that I never need to do it again. The amount of stress that I brought to it was not proportional to the payoff at the end. But I love being on water.
Right.
So I don't regret any time I spent on the water. So kayaking is definitely in my future on like flat water.
Right.
But because just because like, yeah, can I do it? Sure, I can. But do I need something where like I'm going kayaking on Saturday and I start feeling sick on Tuesday because it's so stressful? No, I don't need that in my life. Like that's a boundary I can set. And I think also like at some point you start learning like, I mean, and hopefully the sooner the better, but you don't have anything to prove. Like I don't I don't need to prove that I can do something to myself or anybody else.
Yeah, and I think interestingly, it's possible you felt that way for a long time because there's
Yeah.
a crazy amount of peer pressure, as we all know, to do things that are quote risky
Yeah.
and to try different things that are, deemed risky and maybe promiscuous or like out of the box and you knew yourself well enough to know that wasn't your jam, like that wasn't your
Yeah.
thing. And I think that's a huge part of this conversation is knowing your limits and being willing to test them, but not like destroy them, right? Like you can test your limits without, I don't know, like I'm trying to think of something appropriate to say on the show and I'm blanking, but you can test your limits without going too far.
Um, I will also say, I know adventure is one of your sort of core, I don't know if beliefs is the right word, but
Yeah, it's
like,
hard to figure out the right word.
once again, back to Inside Out, I'm picturing like the islands, one of your core islands.
Yeah, yeah.
And for me, I guess it is a belief is that it is important to me and my that both I and my kids continue to view life as an adventure.
Mm-hmm.
And so to me, that's my core belief and how it relates to adventure. I have not traveled nearly as much as I wish I had in the last 15 years.
Yeah.
Like way less than I wish I would have traveled. And so thank goodness I evolved my definition or how I saw adventure, because life has certainly been an adventure over the last 15 years. And it has lived up to that promise. And I think that is where the joy comes in, right? Is recognizing that I can get it, I can pull adventure out of even some of the more like uninteresting aspects of life. And yes, do I want more travel? Do I want to try foods I've never tried before? Yes. Although I will say, I had this hummus yesterday. I could bathe in this hummus. Like, I don't know that I ever need to eat any other food. I may just need to eat this hummus.
Yeah. When you find
So,
a good hummus, it's
oh
very
my
like,
God, it was so good. Um, that's, a different conversation, but it's an adventure. Life's an adventure. When you find a good hummus, just eat the hummus.
yeah.
And so I think like, figuring out to you what does it like, is adventure important to you, and what does that look like for you?
Right. And like recognizing, as we said earlier, like it changes over different phases of life,
Yeah.
right? Like I'm not going to be the same person I was 20 years ago, 30 years ago. Like that's not how it works. But adventure is important to me and it always has been. So like what is it today? And this conversation is important for me because I have been feeling like, oh no, I'm trapped in suburbia
Right.
and I did not mean to be here. Like I took a left when I meant to take a right. And at the same time, I'm surrounded by opportunities for adventure, right? Like it's just it's what you make of it.
Yeah.
We need to take another quick break. So why don't we do that? And when we come back, I do have a few practical tips of how you can create some adventure in your life. So we will be right back after this break.
Hey, pod friends, it's us again. Looking for a place to collaborate, an opportunity to share your knowledge? Have you been working so hard on a podcast, book, course, product, or retreat? Do you have insights that could light up our podcast? Well, we want to hear from you. We would love to support you in all that you are and do. Join us at Go Boldly Initiative, where we celebrate diverse perspectives and share the wisdom of our incredible community. Whether you're an expert, a hobbyist, or simply love learning, we invite you to reach out with your ideas. Visit our website at goboldlyinitiative.com/podcast guests to pitch the show or shoot us an email at hello@goboldlyinitiative.com to talk all things collaboration, advertising, and affiliation opportunities. Become part of our growing family. Let's make learning an adventure together.
Okay, so welcome back to the show. I did promise before the break that we would talk about how to embrace adventure. And I think the biggest bit of advice I would give, and we do this all the time, is to start small, right? To start with something doable, right? Maybe it's like, instead of every Tuesday you have tacos, you have something else, right? Or try a different grocery store, or I'm hungry, so it's all food
or
references.
like try a different place and then find the most magical hummus you ever had.
Yeah.
Like, you might not realize that the best hummus you like ever is just 10 minutes away.
Yeah. Or incorporate new things into your routines. Like, so
Yeah.
I get up, I get my coffee, and I sit in my like chair where I can put my busted up leg up. And I was thinking this morning, I was like, I'm so sick of doing this. So, tomorrow maybe I'll go sit in my backyard. And it's not an adventure in the sense of like I'm getting on a hot air balloon and flying off into the wilderness. It's an adventure in that I'm changing my routine and I'm trying something different. And maybe it'll be great, maybe it won't, who knows? But it's something different. And these are little ways you can change your life so that it is more adventurous and it's like more exciting for you, right? Like if that's what you're into. And the great part about doing these little changes is that they are generally achievable. So you get the satisfaction of being like, oh, I did it. Like I actually did something adventurous, and I can sort of, not that we want you checking off boxes for this, but like you can check the box. You can be like, I did it today. So I think that that's like one really fantastic way to start the process. There are a lot of barriers to adventure, right? Like there are financial barriers for sure, time, like responsibilities, as adults, we have jobs, we have kids, we have spouses, we have friends who need us, family who needs us, and that can get in the way of what we would typically think of as adventure.
Well, so I think it's really important, though. I just want to talk about this for a second.
Yeah.
Because, and I know I've mentioned it before, but I'm going to mention it again. Back in March, I watched the Lindsay Lohan movie where she went to Ireland.
Yeah.
And when I was watching it and I was texting Riley and I was like, I really am liking this Lindsay Lohan movie, partly because it's reminding me how much I want to go to Ireland and I want to strap on a backpack and like have in a van and go from like little mini hotel or inn or whatever to pub and just walk each day. And like, I don't want to actually carry my backpack, but I want to like have it meet me at the inn, but I want to walk, and because I'm not 20 and I don't feel like carrying a backpack from place to place.
No, thank you.
No. So, but like I do want to walk a lot. And I was like, I wonder how much that costs. Right. And so I looked it up and I was like, oh, okay. Like, so I don't have just like $2,500 to like fling at it right now, but like, it's not cost prohibitive. Like it would probably only take like 5 or 6 days of my time. Like it's $2,500 is actually on the high end. Like if I wasn't like looking like it's not an insane amount of money.
Right.
Like it's in the wheelhouse. I also did the same thing as I mentioned with the Orient Express. That is an insane amount of money. It's like 3 nights, $5,000. You have to dress up every night. So my point is though, there's a lot of times that we take ourselves out of things.
Yeah.
Without being like, without even knowing how much something costs, without knowing how much time it would take, without being like, oh, well, I'm listening to the Kelsey brothers this morning and they're in England because they were we're recording this right after they were all in Taylor Swift's London Wembley tour. Although you're probably listening it right as she's coming back to Wembley, ironically. And I'm like, oh my gosh, I can't, I want to go to London and I want to have tea. And I'm like, yeah, except in July, you're going to New York City and you're having tea. You can figure out how to scratch the adventure itch in a way that's like, financially can fit into your little bucket. Like figure out what part. I mean, my Ireland wish, I just really want to go to Ireland. But like the tea part, like I want just high tea, So my point is let yourself dream. Maybe like when you're sitting out on the, outside having your cup of coffee and you're having your little adventure, like figure out like how much does this adventure cost me? And is there like, what part of it am I most excited about? And is there a way to adapt it to fit into the limitations of my time and resources right now?
Right.
And make it work, because I think sometimes we take ourselves out of adventure when sometimes we have to, but sometimes we don't.
Yeah, I think this goes right back to the very beginning of the episode where you're talking about This Is Us and this idea that, if you have a dream, like put it out there,
Yeah.
tell people, tell your partner, tell your kids, tell yourself, right? Tell yourself about it. Um, because who knows what could happen? Like you could be talking to somebody and they'd be like, "Oh, well, I happen to have an apartment in London and you could stay there for free." Like
Right.
you don't know what might happen. Um, but what you do know and what we know is if you never allow yourself to dream or think about it or share these ideas that you have in your head, then they won't come to fruition. They won't happen, right? Like you can't like hide it away and expect it to like magically appear in front of you. That's not going to happen.
Yeah.
So share these things. And like if you're afraid, right? If you have uncertainty, um think about what specifically it is that is making you afraid, right? Like there are times that in my life where I wish I had done certain things and taken certain risks because in my mind they were huge risks. And now looking back, I'm like, oh, it really wasn't much of a risk. I like probably could have done that. And it's the fear that gets in the way and the uncertainty. And like maybe if it's, something big, you're like, maybe I don't deserve it. Maybe I don't have what it takes
Yeah.
to do the thing, right? So start thinking about what is it specifically that's holding you back. If it's money, like we get that, trust me, we get it. But you can also plan around that, just like Tova said. And if it's fear or feel like devaluing feelings inside yourself, start thinking about that too, because that is one of the biggest things that hold us back from trying new things, right? Like, I don't deserve it. I'm not worth it. Nobody's going to like me. All those sort of negative self-talk. Maybe think about therapy. It does help. But even beyond that, like just voicing those fears gives yourself an opportunity to work through them. So I really think it's important to like put it out there.
Yeah.
So there are resources and support out there if you're like, I want to be adventurous, but I don't know how. I don't know what to do. I don't know. So, if there's something that you're really into, like maybe you're super into cycling, there's like 80 bajillion, and that is a number, cycling groups out there. Join one, right? Like, what's the worst that could happen? You could not like it. Okay. Nothing's changed. There's all kinds of online courses. You want to learn how to cook, but you don't have time or money to go to culinary school. Take an online class. Watch somebody on YouTube. Ugh. Watch us on YouTube. Like there's 100 different ways you can make these things happen. And there are people out there who also want to do the things you want to do, right? Like,
Yep.
I don't think any of us have any original ideas anymore. Like, it's very rare. And so you will likely like be able to Google something and be like, oh, there's these 12 people who also want to do it. And meet them and see what happens.
Well, and have you ever met somebody who really is passionate about something? They love to talk about it.
Oh,
They
yeah.
love to share it with
I
other
mean,
people.
look at us.
Yeah. Can we tell you the definition of something, please?
Please. Yeah, people want to talk about the stuff they're passionate about because they're excited about it, just like you. And that's fantastic. That grows your life in fantastic, wonderful ways. We do need to wrap up. So I have a little bit of homework, and what I would love for you guys to do this week is to make a family, friend group, or personal bucket list by brainstorming what adventure means to you, right? Like, so do all the things we just talked about. Think about the word, think about if it's important in your life. If it is, what does it look like? And think like Tova has been saying all along, like, does it have a weird definition for you that you didn't realize you were assigning to it?
Yeah.
If it does, like think through that and see what you can do to work through it. So it's like more of a positive for you. So make that bucket list. Everyone knows what a bucket list is, right? Like you write down all the things you might want to do. And then pick one of the things from the list and start planning it. Even if it's a trip to, Ireland where you're backpacking, start planning it. Maybe it'll happen next year, maybe it'll happen in 5 years. Who knows? But it won't happen if you don't start planning it. So do all of that. And then, of course, tag us on social media at Go Boldly Together and let us know what you picked and how it goes. I always want to know what people are doing for adventures. it gives me ideas. It gives other people ideas. I think it's fun and I want to high five you while you're doing it. I think it's very cool. And then if you really, if you're like, okay, all that's great, but I really need a little more support, join our weekly women's circle. It is a great place to meet like-minded people, to get ideas, to bounce ideas off each other, share your celebrations, share your struggles, all of those wonderful, wonderful things. So join us anytime. We would love to have you. And I think that's it for this week. We're going to be back next week with another word and talking through what it means for us and how it brings us joy. So I don't know, unless you have anything else, Tova.
I think that's about it.
Okay. Well, we will be back next week, everyone. Have a wonderful, wonderful week.
Thanks so much for listening to We Go Boldly podcast. We know you're busy and we love spending time with you.
If you enjoyed this week's episode, let us know. Head to Apple Podcasts right now to rate and review our show. While you're there, be sure to click that subscribe button.
Want more us time? Follow us on all the socials at Go Boldly Together.
Want even more us time? As in all the coaching pizzazz. Find us at goboldlyinitiative.com for all the info.
We will be back with more excitement, research, and deep thoughts next week.
Until then, keep on being the bold, brave, amazing people we know you already are.
The Power Moms Network, empowering moms to lift the world.